am a creative placemaker. So I create emotional connections with place in order to highlight, protect, and revitalize history. So I do that through making art, through historical research, and through event planning. City of Night is the biggest one of those events that you probably know of. That is, yes, it's working, great. So that's one of the biggest events that I've done. And when I'm not planning events, I'm doing art commissions, I'm researching the history of buildings and places, and I'm working with nonprofits on contract work of various kinds. So one of the things that I really love about Buffalo is how cooperative and collaborative it is. Everybody here is working together towards shared goals. So that's what's really the part of Buffalo that I feel I have embraced and that has embraced me. And I feel really welcome here, and this place has definitely changed me. So some of the things that I do also is I have curated historic programming for places like Canalside. Here are some Erie Canal workers. I have done tactical urbanism events like Parking Day. This is me putting my life at risk in the parking lane. You turn a parking space into a parklet for a day of various kinds. It started in San Francisco. And these are some of the artworks that I've done. So from a really early age, I was a person who shunned mystery. I never wanted to not know something. I wanted to understand everything I could. I wanted to be the master of my own destiny, and in order to do that, I needed to read and research and write and analyze and understand, and I loved writing papers, and God. So, I have been working in that manner for 30-some years, right? So I always kind of had this thought of knowledge is power. That was definitely in my head. I'll be going to college, I'll be getting a degree, I'll be learning everything I can, I need to be smart, I need to succeed, I need to be free, and I need to be in control. I think that Nikola Tesla would agree with that whole knowledge is power thing. He was born in a rural town in Croatia. His dad was an Orthodox priest. His mom was a homemaker. Dad wanted him to enter the priesthood. He was like, nah. He went to Austria to study engineering, and he moved to Paris to work for an Edison telegraph related company. His big grand plan was to get to the United States so that he could fulfill his destiny, which was embodied in this quote. In the schoolroom, there were a few mechanical models which interested me and turned my attention to water turbines. I constructed many of these and found great pleasure in operating them. I was fascinated by a description of Niagara Falls that I had seen in a book. I pictured in my mind a big wheel turned by the falls. I told my uncle I would go to America to carry out my scheme. 30 years later, I saw my ideals carried out at Niagara and marveled at the unfathomable mystery of the mind. I love that quote. So the pinnacle of Tesla's career happened here, and 120 years ago yesterday, he was celebrated after sending power long distance for the first time from Niagara Falls to Buffalo, AC power, 22 miles, world-changing event. 120 years ago yesterday, they threw a big gala for him at the Ellicott Square building called the Power Banquet. All of these investors, capitalists, engineers from around the country, dignitaries like Mayor Jewett, John Jacob Astor, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, were there to celebrate this inventor who had brought us into this electrical age. People were just mind blown by what he had done. This was, like I said, world-changing. It was absolutely new. So this guy, Tesla, I think he's back in our popular consciousness right now because a lot of the things that he came up with or foresaw and wasn't able to carry out in his life are happening now in this millennial age, right? Wireless technology, the fact that I can do this, etc. So what drew me to obsessively research and understand a person like Tesla? I really loved how he had this great, strong, bold personality and absolute command of science. I thought that was impressive. However, he thinks so too. However, what he also did was he made magical things happen that seemed otherworldly to people at the time. So I'm always trying to find common ground with people. Where's the connection point? What is it about Tesla that I identify with so much? And I realized that he and I both want to inspire people by combining fact and fantasy. So a number of the things that he and I both did, and I'm not trying to conflate myself with Tesla, don't get me wrong. I just feel inspired by him and I want to be like him. So maybe this is a little bit of hero worship, but what happens to make people change? They need to feel an emotional resonance. They need emotional connection. So emotional connection with place has been my calling card on a lot of the projects that I've worked on in my life. Here are a few of them. I worked on I was with a group that was trying to save the Bethlehem Steel Administration building. It was under threat of demolition. A group of us were doing crazy things like holding art-ins to document the structure. We were holding rallies and barbecues in a blizzard just to get the press to show up. We were doing all sorts of radical, weird things because some of us were experienced preservationists and some of us, like myself, had no clue what we were doing. But the National Trust for Historic Preservation got wind of this project and invited me to become an advisor to their board of advisors. Because they knew I was an outsider who was doing some really interesting stuff. So that really was important to them to gather attention. Also for the SS Columbia project, I helped them reimagine some of the ways that people could connect locally, sponsors, partners, ideas for art-ins. I even drew a few coloring pages for them. And then speaking of coloring, I created these Buffalo coloring books after I found out that Talking Leaves did not have any Buffalo coloring books, but only nationally branded ones. I wanted people to explore and have delight in the city. So all along, I guess I've been a practitioner of mystery and I didn't really see it that way. But one of the things that made me realize this was City of Night was held at the grain elevators because they're awe-inspiring. They're the literal heart of Buffalo's history. When our group toured that site in 2011, we were gravitationally pulled by that collective memory. And what we realized was that art was the best way to interpret that history. We got a really big response too. It was crazy. It was a transformational experience for all of us to be there together and to accumulate all of these creative moments. So with time and a little help from my friends, I have been able to unravel the mystery of my life, and now I see that my mission is to point shit out. I'm supposed to make people aware of the hidden history that we take for granted and leverage that for our communal future. Even more importantly, I've turned this mission inward to know myself and to trust this amazing community that I've helped to build. One of my favorite quotes, "Leap and the net will appear." I've been embraced by this Buffalo community, the same place where people like Tesla made their leaps and made an indelible impact on our society. And I am learning every day how to plumb the unfathomable mysteries of my own mind. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Steve. I'm so thankful to be here this morning. I love this community, love being a part of it, and so glad I can be here to talk about mystery. Now, the people who know me best can tell you that I'm acquainted with mystery. My mom could tell you that the day when I was a senior at Purdue studying engineering and I told her I was going to stop doing that and go to school to study ministry and become a pastor, okay, there was some mystery in there for her. You could ask my father-in-law when a few years ago I told him I was going to quit my job even though I didn't have another one to go to, that I was going to move my family into the city, to start a church for people who didn't like going to church, and I didn't have any people or money or a clue, but I was doing it anyway, okay? For him, there was some mystery wrapped up in that, okay? He was just getting over it. So I know a little bit about mystery. In fact, the fact that I'm a pastor, to many of you, that's probably mysterious. It's probably like when you were a kid and you thought your teacher lived in the school, and then you saw him at Target and kind of flipped out. Like most people think that pastors probably live in a church, they work one day a week. There's a lot of mystery about what it is that I do, okay? And so I want to tell you a little bit about that. Let me see if I can operate this thing better. Look at that. I got fancy with the first grab. So what is it that a pastor does? This is how I like to say it. I help people find themselves in the story. Find themselves in the story of humanity, in the story of the world, and in the story of God. And how do I do that? Well, there's a lot of things I do, but one of the things I do is I'm a communicator. And all I do simply is look at ancient manuscripts that were written thousands of years ago, trying to understand what their original first century audience interpreted, and then take that and try to help it to make sense of the life of a 21st century overnight. That's all. That's all I do. Put it simply. So, ironically enough, as many things have changed in the world, some styles have not. And that's all this means. But what I do is simply this. I dig in to these texts, and they're so mysterious. In fact, so many people read them, and they read them with their cultural lenses, and they really don't understand what they're saying. There's a lot of mystery there. There's a lot of work to be done, and so that's what I do. I spend my hours looking at original languages, trying to find context for these words and how they're used, and then the original audience, their cultural setting, and how that these documents originally gave meaning and context to the people there. And what I mean is this, listen, we all are living in a story. And we all are you know how a story begins and how a story ends? Gives context to everything that happens in the middle. Let me give you a quick example. Two guys go into work one morning. Now the first guy's pulled aside by his boss, and the boss says this to him: listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to pay you $200. And he sends the guy through the doors to work. Now he pulls another guy in, and he says, listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to pay you $1 million. And he sends him through the doors to work. Now these two guys are going into the same place to do the same job, and it's not a good job. It's hot in there, and it's dirty. And listen, as soon as they walk in, people are yelling at them and blaming them for things that they didn't do. They're not appreciated. It's just not a great place to be. And yet, these two men interpret their day radically differently. The first guy walks in, and from the start, he's angry. He feels unappreciated. He's not being paid enough. He's worrying about the bills that need to be taken care of, and how $200 is nothing. And he's already arguing with the people next to him. The whole day, he's grumbling. The other guy is humming and whistling. Like the other guy's being, people are swearing at him and telling him to do this and that, and it just doesn't seem like anything's landing on him. Like he's light on his feet. Like at any moment, this guy is going to break out a musical. Two guys are experiencing the exact same thing, but what they believe about the future and their story radically changes how they interpret it. Somebody once said that human beings are hope-based creatures, that we live our lives basing it out of what we believe will happen down the road. And so when I say that I help people find their story, that's what I do. Is I look at these texts, and there's so much mystery in them, and I research them, and I love doing it and trying to find out, what did this mean to this people? How did it give them context for their life experience? And then I do the same thing and the same kind of work with my community and with my city and with my country, my world, as I look at human lives and how we live and say, what is it? What's the thing beneath the thing? What is it that we're struggling with? What is keeping you and I from being all that I believe we were created to be? What's keeping people from really experiencing life and freedom and joy? Like, what is that? And then the mystery comes when I try to take these two worlds and then bring them together. Now, I bring them together in weird ways. Like this is a series we're doing right now called Bye, Felicia. And what we're doing is, look, there's ancient peoples who had this real struggle with how do we break free from our past? And how do we have new life when we're living in a culture that wants to confine us by how they have defined us? And so we do crazy, weird things like that. So where are we going with this? That's a great question. So here's how I deal with mystery. I deal with mystery in the text. I deal with mystery. But then there's this problem where I've got to bring these two worlds together. I've got to bring these two different cultures and help them somehow connect in a way that gives meaning. Because here's the deal. I don't speak so that people can pat me on the back. I don't speak because I want to have a really large audience so I feel good about myself. Really, my goal in life is to see people's lives transformed, to see people free to be who they're created to be. If I'm not doing that, I am failing. And so in my life, I strive to find a way to bring these worlds together in so that those of us who are still alive can have the best life ever. And so there's mystery in this. And so I live in this space where every week I'm writing and creating content that I'm going to deliver to people. And here's even the more mysterious thing. Even after I do that, What then happens in somebody's heart and mind is a mystery. Because I have people come up to me and they're like, Steve, what you said this morning meant so much to me. It was a question I was wrestling with, and this is back to my childhood, and they're going off, and it's amazing, and I'm so pumped that that's what happened. But in my mind, I'm thinking, that's not what I said at all. It's not. But I'm like, but that's awesome. There's even mystery that you and I can engage in the mysterious and find these connections. Because here's my big idea. This is the thing I should have said in the first minute, is this. If you have trust that there's meaning, purpose, and connection in this world, it will free you to create. If you believe there's purpose, meaning, and a connection to be made in this world, instead of being frozen by mystery, instead of thinking that mysteries, you're actually being spun off into nowhereness of space, if you believe there's meaning and purpose, then it just compels you to explore. It compels you to search because you believe deep down. If that's the story you believe in, that this world and this universe has meaning and purpose, it will free you to jump into mystery because you believe that you're going to find good footing. And so, my friends, I want to give you 3 things very quickly because I like to be practical. I don't want to leave you just with some ideas. Here's some three things that I can tell you as I move even closer, and I hit use the cursor.
There we go.
So here's my big idea. Hopefully you wrote that down, good students. Here's my 3 things to tell you. First, be humble. First thing is this: recognize that you don't have all the answers, and you don't even need all the answers. In fact, I think the best things happen when you and I just go at it, we jump into the mystery and say, I don't have it all figured out, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm going to enter into this and I'm going to trust and believe that these connections will be made. So the first one is to be humble. Thank you, friend. I appreciate that. The second one is this, is to be generous. Listen, mystery requires time and space. Mystery can't be rushed. I actually, when it comes to my messages, I have 6 months of stuff planned out. So I know what I'm going to be talking on at least 6 months in advance because I want to give this time for mystery. And I want to give time for these things to emerge and these connections to work their way. I don't want to rush it because then it becomes forced and it becomes something from me, and that's not what I want. And then the last one is be listening. Be listening everywhere. You will be surprised where these connections come from. Be listening. Be listening to everything. Be listening to your friends. Be listening to things you don't normally listen to. Be listening to music and poetry, okay? Be listening to everything around you, because you will be surprised what it will be where this mystery suddenly reveals itself, the connection is made. You just never know. So that's my talk, my friends. I hope that you trust that there is meaning, purpose, and connections in this world. Because if you do, mystery is going to free you to create.
So I believe the best thing about mystery is creating anticipation. So let me tell you something. I had emergency head surgery on Monday. So I'm not saying I'm going to die during my talk, but I could literally say anything up here. So just be ready. Okay. It did work. All right. So I'm Tara Sasadak. Hi, I'm an artist and a teacher and a person, and I'm going to tell you about how mystery helped me to be a better painter and sometimes a better person. It can help you too. So, the Mysterium Tremendum et Fascinans is a very fancy sounding phrase, and I'm going to tell you about it in a minute. But the thing about me as a painter was that I used to paint paintings that were very obvious. It would be like if you went to go see Jurassic Park and the first thing you saw was a T-Rex, like all up in your face. And I was jumping right to the money shot, right? I wasn't warming you up at all. And what I learned over time was that that's very rude, right? You don't want to just do that to a person. You show them like the claw of the raptor at the beginning of the movie, that fossil of it. And you show them the T-Rex moving through the trees, like the shadow of it. And you show them that poor goat that it eats, but you don't know what it is. And it's just like the whole time your brain is inventing this giant, scary thing, right? And that mystery is so compelling. And so as I realized this, I was like, oh, my paintings need to become more ambiguous because your brain is so much better than my painting can ever be. So if I take the things that I'm interested in and I look at them and I layer them and I let them be the shadow behind the trees, my paintings become much better because they're more mysterious. that ambiguity helped me a lot. And so then I thought, this ambiguity can probably help the rest of my life. So I started applying this more generally and thinking of it as letting your brain complete the process, letting that part of your brain that spins off on the story create fascination for your life. The more that I let my painter's eye, be fascinated in what interested me, not what I was supposed to be interested in, but what really interested me, like maybe fungus on a pathway going up a mountain, or maybe the way that my dogs drool like reflects the sunlight. It's not traditional, but it's interesting to me, and going in that direction made me realize that the more things I could find interesting, the more entertaining my day was in general, because everything was suddenly interesting. Everyone was suddenly interesting. And letting that interest unfold inside of you is actually something that I think we're nervous to do, because we went to school, and I've taught middle school, and being interested is not cool in middle school. It is like the least cool thing that you can do is be super interested. So we have to remind ourselves to chase those mysteries that are interesting specifically to us. Not the cool mystery, not Pokemon Go. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying whatever we are interested in that our inner 11-year-old is like, oh, shh, no. You have to just embrace that. And it gives us a reason to keep going. So one of my favorite quotes, which I swore I was going to memorize with brain surgery, I'm just going to paraphrase. So if you guys have read The Once and Future King or seen The Sword and the Stone, King Arthur is this awesome poor kid, right? He's an orphan and he's abused, and then he turns out to be the king, and his wife runs off with his best friend, and he has this inbred son who wants to murder him, and it's awful. So the last night of his life, he's hanging out in this tent on this battlefield that the next day he's just going to get clobbered. It's tragic. Why am I telling you this? It's just depressing. But Merlin, who's his mentor, who's been his teacher his whole life, is sitting him down, and he's like, look, Arthur, you're old and it sucks and you've lost all your material possessions and your wife ran away with Lancelot, who's better than you, sorry bro. And nobody likes your text on Facebook. This is what Merlin says in the book to him. It doesn't matter, because you can learn something. You can always still learn something. No matter how horrible your life is, you can still learn something, and that is so magnificent. It makes me think about Frida Kahlo painting in her hospital bed. She's got all these pieces of, rod in her spine, and she can't get out of bed, but she's still learning something. She's still teaching herself. And that is such a northern star for me, because living is incredibly difficult sometimes. Everyone doesn't struggle with self-harm, but the people that I love do, and I do. And so I think a lot about, what are the reasons to keep going? What are my reasons to keep doing this work? And besides the good altruistic ones, like not hurting the people around you and sticking around to help the world and not having anyone ever look at your Facebook feed ever again, there's also this want to know what's going to happen. That is my ironclad reason. I don't want to put the book of my life down halfway through. And keeping curiosity in your life really helps with that. It keeps you on mission, it keeps you interested, and it keeps you alive. So what's more valuable than mystery? And the best thing about this curiosity, this mystery that we're chasing, is that it's not going to ever run out. So we're going to run out of Ben and Jerry's, and we're going to run out of time on this earth, but we're not going to run out of things that we don't know. It's literally the only resource that we cannot exhaust. And if you pause and think about that for a moment, it's very reassuring. Even the night before your inbred son murders you on the battlefield, you can still learn something. It's very beautiful. So, to my big fancy title, The Mysterium Tremendum et Fascinans. So, raise your hand if you've read, seen, or been forced to watch The Secret Garden. Anybody? Okay, so for those of us who haven't seen The Secret Garden or read it, there's this giant old British mansion. Just pretend you are this giant old British mansion. And this plucky young English girl, who is probably poor, these are how these stories go, comes to the mansion, and she discovers a secret garden, but she also discovers that deep inside the mansion, there's this poor, sad little British boy who just never goes outside. And she finds this little British boy inside the mansion. He's like, no, I don't want to go outside. And she's like, you're doing it. And then he's out in the garden, and he's like, oh, look, flowers, yay. And, right? Yeah. So you know that you have that boy inside of you, and he doesn't want to go, but you have to take him out into the garden. And this is what's in the garden, the sublime. You guys, the sublime is a little bit that T-Rex screaming at you in the face. Rudolf Otto studied religious experience, and he was trying to quantify, what is this thing that's drawing people back? What is this mystery? And he said there's something magnificent about it, but also terrible. It's enormous and terrifying, and you can't tear your eyes away. And chasing this is kind of what's at the bottom of that mystery. It might be different for every one of us, but that feeling, I hope you have thought of it. I hope that you're thinking of it now. It's the mysterium tremendum. It's so enormous, and you feel so small, but you're also a part of it. And this feeling of the sublime, social psychologists are finding that it makes us better. It makes us kinder to feel awe, not just to other humans. Literally, they're finding it makes us more altruistic, but also to ourselves. It makes us kinder to ourselves, and that is enormous, because then we can do our work. And I think 70% of brain surgery, you guys. 70% of these experiences are being quantified as in nature. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Okay, so I'm in Maine, and the largest mountain in Maine is called Mount Katahdin. And I'm like, yes, Lord of the Rings. My husband wants to climb up this mountain, and I'm like, cool, I am Frodo, you're Sam, we're gonna do this. He's like, fine, I'm Sam. So we're climbing up the mountain, and for like an hour, he's like, we're almost there, we're almost there. 8 hours later, he's like, honey, we're almost there, and I'm just like, but then I get to the top of the mountain, right? And I hope you've been at the top of the mountain, people. I'm this tiny speck in an alien landscape. I'm looking at the top of clouds. I am so small, and the world is so big, and the moose at the bottom of the mountain are also tiny specks, and I'm connected to everything. And I'm like, I'm not gonna kill my husband. This is awesome. This is what awesome means. And I hold that inside of myself all the time. So I'm probably never gonna kill him, you guys. Isn't that great? And mystery solved. So maybe your mystery isn't at the top of a mountain, but whatever it is specifically to you, you know, fungus or mountaintops or really weird things, it is weird to you, and that's because you're weird. You're supposed to be weird, because that chases your life. And you have to chase that specific thing, because that is going to be your gift to the world. So just do it. That's it, I'm done.